Looks like it's podcast time again. Today's guest is Mark Gatiss. Goodness me, you do a bit of research on Mark Gatiss. I don't think he's ever been in anything that wasn't really good. Most notably, you'd probably be thinking about The League of Gentlemen and Sherlock and Doctor Who. But alongside that, so many things as actor, as writer, as director. I mean, the theatre stuff, you'll hear in the talk, he has a new play that he's directed, which has been going around the country and is about to come to the West End, January of 2023. So many things. We're roughly the same age, so our old friend mortality crops up in this conversation. So if you're of a nervous disposition or you don't like to think about that, then maybe this one isn't for you. But you'd be missing out because we talk about so many things. He even talks, we go from Tom Cruise to Larry Grayson. How on earth can those two things be linked? You're about to find out. A Spotify exclusive, Brydon and Mark Gatiss. We'll have to share with the observer, which nicely covers listener and viewer, that we have just suffered some technical challenges as great as any. And I think when I die, Mark, and they look in to see cause of death, a big part of it will be the stress I suffered doing this podcast when the tech didn't work.
Yes, well, you had a full head of jet black hair when we started this, as I remember now. I was just saying the other night, wasn't I, how much I like your professorial beard. It really suits you. It's very Viennese, if I may say so.
As in the place, not the ice cream.
Like a whirl. No, that's a Viennetta. Get it right.
What's a Viennese whirl?
Viennese whirl is one of those lovely biscuits you only get in sort of country house hotels. They're always welcome.
Oh, yeah. I saw you just the other night at a do. I ran into you a few months ago at a rehearsal space, did I not?
Yes. You were about to do the Sondheim, weren't you?
Yeah, I was rehearsing this wonderful show, this tribute to Stephen Sondheim that Cameron Mackintosh put on, which I loved. And then you were in one of the other rehearsal rooms. I assumed preparing an acting role, but you weren't.
No, I was directing Steven Moffat's play The Unfriend, which is now transferring to the Criterion in London's glittering West End. It's exciting.
Okay, so let's just take stock. Listen to you. Knowing your background like I do, how much pleasure do you remember to allow yourself to enjoy when you say something like that?
That's a very good question. I think there's a lot, isn't there, to be said for taking time to enjoy things and just go, this is a moment, this is, I remember, funnily enough, Steven Moffat once writing a column for Doctor Who magazine in the high pomp of David Tennant's time, when about just how many amazing things were happening. And he said, I'm kind of nostalgic for now. And that's always stayed with me. That's the sort of thing you need to sort of hang on to, isn't it? Because it's only when they've stopped or you suddenly turn around and you're 78 and you go, oh my God, that was quite a moment, wasn't it? So yeah, I'm very appreciative and also trying very hard. I don't know what you can do on a day-to-day basis, though, to sort of smell the flowers, but I'm just desperately trying to.
I think it's something, it weighs on my mind a lot. And I think people come to it at different stages because there are so many songs. There's a Carly Simon song where she says, these are the good old days. There's a Billy Joel song where he says, this is the time to remember, for it will not last forever. Yeah. And obviously you and I, you're 56, is that right?
56, yes. Incredible.
I'm 57, so we're both kind of going through the same things. How you change, and as you get older. And there's a great quote I saw from it was a lovely interview you did in The Guardian the other day. And you talk, it says in here, it says, Gatiss grew up in County Durham in a working class family, obsessed with horror films and ghost stories. It says he still is, as his work shows, but I wonder if his tolerance for some aspects of it has decreased with age. And in the interview, you said, yes, he says, with a quiet laugh. I think it's no accident that anyone gothy tends to be a slightly truculent 15-year-old. And you mentioned an experience with George Baker, the actor. Tell us about that.
I worked with George Baker. I loved, obviously, from I, Claudius and On Her Majesty's Secret Service and so many things. And Jeremy Dyson and I cast him in A Ghost Story on the radio about 2000, 2001. And we were thrilled to work with him. But he told me this story about working with a young theatre director several years before, who encouraged her cast to climb in and out of an open grave or something like that. And he said, don't go looking for death. It'll find you soon enough. And she died. And she died, not that night, but she died shortly afterwards. It's always stayed with me. And I think I absolutely mean it about that. That what you have such a high tolerance for morbidity when you're 15, because it seems like it's thousands of years in the future. And the older you get. So I think you just recalibrate, don't you? Have a different relationship to it. Speaking of those songs, though, my favorite of those songs, of course, is "Enjoy Yourself." The specials, but obviously it's an old song from the 30s. But that song has always echoed for me. It's later than you think. It should be written across everyone's, front door, really.
Absolutely. But I love that story about George Baker when I read it. It reminded me, I did a play a few years ago, Chorus of Disapproval, and Barry Rutter was in the cast. Wonderful actor. And one day we were doing our warm-ups on the stage before the show, and I was moaning about how tired I was because my boys, who are now 14 and 11, would have been very young then, and we weren't sleeping and da-da-da. And I was saying, of course, the thing is, in about X years, it'll be a lot easier. And he said, he's quite cross, stop wishing your bloody life away.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me.
Oh, yeah. I remember my mum saying that to me a lot when I was a kid. I was always in a hurry to grow up. I always wanted to be older and more experienced, and I always wanted to get to the reunion. And it's a terrible thing. It's stupid, because the best of times is now.
And what are you drawn to? Because I've always thought that I've always been drawn more to experience than to youthful energy. I've often seemed to gravitate towards older performers rather than the young, energetic, challenging kind of people.
Yes, I mean, me too. One of my hobbies is recognizing elderly character actors in the street. I've been doing it for years, and I'm very good at it. I'm extremely good at reminding them of the least well-remembered project, which I know is closest to their heart. I carry a little book, but. And my mum used to say I had an old soul. I loved talking to old people from when I was very small. I loved it. I loved the idea of that connection to the past. I remember vividly my girlfriend when I was 17 or 18. Her grandfather was very old, and one afternoon we were just talking. We were watching a film or something, just talking about something, and he was from rural Yorkshire, very rural Yorkshire, and he remembered, just out of nowhere, he said, I remember in the springtime, well, we were walking in the field, and suddenly there was a commotion. A lad come running across the field, waving his hands. He says, "Hey, Titanic's gone down." And we just went, it was just magic. And you just can't imagine that gulf could be covered by one person, but there he was, So I've always responded that sort of stuff. But now, equally, I did a film in the Outer Hebrides a couple of years ago with an almost entirely a cast of almost entirely in their 20s, and they were so fantastically energized and busy. They were all writing things, all directing things. And I know this sounds vampiric and vaguely sinister, but you do get something from that kind of energy. You do. It's good to stay around younger people because it reminds you of what you were like before you were ancient and jaded.
Well, I'll tell you who in the public eye is the greatest vampire in the nicest sense of the word. Yeah. Are you ready for this?
Go on.
Sir Elton John.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because he really interestingly, he's been recording, I mean, for as long as I can remember, with young, he's always been interested. He's not that one who says, oh, it's not like it was in my day. He feasts on the younger artists.
I tell you, who used to be, of course, the greatest proponent of that as well was Barry Cryer, who was, despite having done everything and worked for everyone, was constantly interested in going forward. And it's so unusual because, everyone tends to become a bit, it's not as good as it used to be. He had no truck with that, Barry. He was brilliant about it. He wanted to know what the next funny thing was. And it was, it kept him young. I mean, literally, he never looked any different till the day he died. I think it's a really positive thing to do. And actually, Olivier did it, quite cannily sort of hitched his wagon to John Osborne just at the point he would have become irrelevant. And it was a very clever move. It might have been more cynical than it looks, but it actually worked for him because it gave him Archie rights and it changed the course of his second half of his career.
So do I need to be moving away from David Mitchell and Lee Mack and closer to Rob Beckett and Roisin Connerty? Should I be thinking about that?
I don't think you could get much closer, as you seem to be sharing panels with them all the time. So I think you're fine like that. Maybe somewhere between the two is good, Rob.
You can feel that somebody said once a phrase. I don't think it's particularly fresh, but I appear to have fallen into the generation gap, and this thing I'm filming now for this beard is a thing called My Lady Jane. It's set in Tudor times, and a lot of young, very sexy young actors in that. And, when we're sitting around the green room or the easy up waiting for a shot, I have been known to doze.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, it's one of life's great pleasures, isn't it? I mean,
well, it is now, but it wasn't always, and with it comes a big red flag saying, if you think this dose is good, wait until the dose you're going to have right at the very end.
Yes, well, my grandma used to have an expression: "You're looking at the lid for a very long time."
I've never heard that.
Good, isn't it?
Oh, Lord. And one last thing on smelling the roses. In that quote that I read, the bit about from that very nice interview, I thought, in The Guard, it reminded me of how when I did Human Remains, which is when I met you, Julia and I had there'd be illness in several of those. And in one in particular, there was, my character got a type of cancer and someone else had this and that. I don't think I would write that now because I don't want to do anything that might wake that illness up and say, oh, did somebody mention me? That's a definite change.
You must become more superstitious as you get older. No, I don't know. I think there's a lot. I did a show with Steve Pemberton when I was at college called Damage Your Children, which we took to the Edinburgh Festival. And it was this is our first proper review for the Times Higher Educational Supplement. Success to Scandal. Never forgotten. It was like a kind of Jacobean revenge comedy done as a game show. And it was incredibly violent. We had massive effects of people's stomachs splitting open. It was really gory. And the idea was that it was like in a sort of Death Race 2000 where the contestant had to put their kid into hazard, as they used to say in the 18th century. And it was we were just having a laugh, but we said and did things in that. I mean, we would never do that, but that's because we were 20 and you can do that then. And I don't think it's about being sort of censorious or you just become more aware of the impact of things, I suppose, don't you? And also, as you say, it is like raising ghosts. You sort of think, I don't think I'd say that now. I think or I'd certainly tackle it in a different way. Illness is very interesting, actually, because Wilkie Collins is one of my favorite writers, who was a permanently sick man, and illness pervades all of his stories, but it's always in a fantastically Victorian way, which you find sort of I find vaguely attractive. You know what I mean? There's an amazing one called Poor Miss Finch. It was about a blind girl who falls in love with one of a set of twins, and then she has a revolutionary operation to restore her sight, but she falls for the wrong one once she has her sight back. And basically, the lesson is better blind.
Where the hell would that idea come from? Old Wilkie is sitting around one day. He goes, here's a good idea. Well, back to Julia Davis, who you've worked with, I think, almost as much as I have. She's got a big thing with illness. I mean, it was in Nighty Night that you did with her. She likes dubious illness, or feigned illness is a big thing, a big theme with her. And we had some of that in Human Remains. You mentioned the mighty Steve Pemberton. You, Rhys Shearsmith, Steve Pemberton, and Jeremy Dyson, did you all meet at the same time, at the young age?
Yes. Well, Steve and I were in the same year at Bretton Hall in Yorkshire, and Rhys was the year below, and Jeremy was at Leeds University proper down the road, and Gordon Anderson, as he became, who was in our year, he was a friend of Jeremy's and introduced us. So that's how we all got to know each other.
How soon when you met did you go, yeah, I'm so in sync with these guys?
With Steve straight away. I mean, it was like the first day, and it was all, really? We bonded completely over the total absurdity of the stuff we were doing, and we sort of realised we'd made a huge mistake coming there. but it's a brilliant thing, as you know, isn't it? That sort of rapport, when you realise you've got such a sort of shared currency. And one thing we discovered, which we now have an actual date for, which is remarkable. We all realized, all four of us, that we had all, at the age of about 9 or 10, not gone to a bonfire in order to stay in to watch Carry On Screaming. And it's November the 5th, 1976. That was that night. We were all watching it at the same time. So in my head, we're sort of linked like that.
That's fantastic. That really is. I mean, that's a huge thing. You said that you realised you'd made a mistake. You were at a place called Bretton Hall. Was that a drama school?
Yes. So it was a sort of affiliated college to Leeds. But it was a very remote campus. It's a place called West Bretton, next to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. It's beautiful. It's finally going to become a hotel, I think. It closed as a college, but it was a really unusual place, and retrospectively was very good for us because we became extremely self-sufficient. We put on our own shows, like in a Cliff Richard movie, you know, and it gave us a lot of good preparation for doing the same when we got out. But it was an odd place, and the remoteness was remarkable. It seems incredible to say in this day and age, but West Bretton itself was a dry village. It was a temperance village. So the only bar for about 7 miles was on the college campus. So people used to sort of just invade it in search of a drink.
Was it a local college for local people?
Yeah, it very much was. And incredibly, to make the residents go even further, the college scarf had the same colours as the one in The Prisoner, which was not lost on us.
No, I'll bet it wasn't lost on you. Reading up on you. I knew it anyway, but you really have followed your thing, haven't you? You know, you had this thing as a kid, and you have explored that seam so beautifully.
Well, I mean, a huge amount of it is dumb luck. but because it doesn't, a lot of people think I'd like to do this and this is exactly what I'd like to do. It doesn't happen, but I have been very lucky in terms of the way that things have connected like that. But I mean, I'm a great believer that the child is father to the man, and you know those. I think also somehow you kind of go in a loop. Sometimes you kind of get away from some of your childhood interests, and then you come back to them, and they go, "Oh yes, I remember this." Like I collect fossils. I was an obsessive fossil collector, and for years I didn't collect fossils. And then one day on a beach, I remembered the incredible kind of peace and joy it gives me just spending hours on a cliff edge. It's sort of a Zen-like thing. It really is, and you remember the kind of, I suppose, the simple pleasures that they provide, and it also, in a way, it takes you back to a simpler time, doesn't it? Right. Tom Baker tells a very famous story about passing a homeless guy in the street in Liverpool, I think. And he was just walking past and he heard this man saying, "Got any spare change?" And he was just passing by, and then the voice just went, "Doctor." And he looked this man in the face, and he said he could just see in his eyes that for a moment he was having beans on toast in front of the TV with his mum. And he said, "Get us out of here, doctor." Oh. God, I know. Yeah.
And I'll bet Tom Baker didn't. What a dreadful man.
He didn't have his TARDIS with him, but he did give him. He had another thing he always used to say was he was very keen on helping the homeless, Tom. And he once said, I wish one day, instead of the usual, someone said, "Excuse me, do you have £1,000 for a Jeroboam of champagne?"
So you got together really early on with them, and then famously the League of Gentlemen. And the way I look at it, that was a hit from the word go.
Well, yes, we did it. So we did it on stage. It was a fringe. Sorry, my dog.
Tell me a little bit about the dog. What prompted? It's a big decision to buy, and that's a proper dog as well. That's not a lap dog. That's a proper dog.
Yeah, actually, he's half the size of our old Labrador Bunsen, who we lost 4 years ago, 5 years ago. He was a very tall lab and joy. Well, we made that decision. I made a decision. I grew up with dogs, and I've always loved dogs. I believe very sincerely that although you can like dogs and cats, I like both. I don't think you can quite trust people who don't like dogs. I think there's something missing. I think there is.
It's hard to understand. It really is hard to understand how you could not like any dogs. I can understand you may not like a certain type of dog, but the Labrador for me, and the Golden Retriever, I would say the king and queens of the dog world.
Actually, officially, they rule over the land of dogs.
But does Bob tie you and Ian down?
Only in so much, I mean, you have children, so you know what that's like. In a way, I can say this with not having children, but I imagine it's similar, but there is less responsibility in terms of saying we can do this. We just have to adjust to it. He's not a tie because we always find a way. If we go on holiday, he stays with Ian's parents or friends come look after him, things like that. So it's not. And there's an incredible joy from having him in our lives. It is like, if you've ever thought about ruling a kingdom, it's like having a fool. It is like having a fool. It is. I mean, he does something every day to make me laugh. It is. And it really works. I mean, he's just lights up our lives. He's so silly, and he lives this fantastically straightforward life based around footballs, ball chasing, food, sleep, fun. Everyone should be more like a dog.
I've never heard it described as like you're some kind of King Lear figure, and here's the fool. That's coming from a man steeped in the theatre.
I'm only happy when I'm playing kings now. It's something it settles on you later in life.
You'd done more theatre than I realised. I knew you'd done theatre, but then when I looked at it, and you've also done, and this will sound like I'm blowing what's it up your what's it, but I would say you reek of quality, Mark Gatiss. And looking at the theatre portfolio, you've done some lovely, interesting work. It's a dull question. What do you prefer, the screen or the stage? But the stage, I know, gives you something very different from the screen, does it not?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's no need to choose. I think if you're able to, it's
exactly. There's no. What is it? It's and I'm doing it now. It's this constant thing of. It's like you're talking two 7-year-olds talking to each other. What's the best color? Yeah. What's the favorite? I don't. What's your favorite Elvis record?
Yeah.
I know it doesn't have to be binary,
but it's true though, because it is, you know. And people usually say, obviously, it's different every night, and that's a great joy of theatre. And therefore, you get another go at it. But obviously, you get another go largely when you're filming, unless you're really up against it, in which you don't get another go. But that's a different sort of thing. And then you're also ultimately you're in the hands of the editor, aren't you, as to whether that particular part of your superlative performance actually gets seen. Whereas...
Oh, I know. That's a fascinating thing, which I would imagine people possibly not aware of, which is, you get to end of a take, oh, that was quite good, that one. I hope they use that.
Yeah.
Or how about this? You're doing a very good take. You're very happy. You feel you've done what you done. And then a mistake is made, perhaps not by you. A mistake made by another actor, and they then delight in guffawing and corpsing. That can try your patience.
Yes, maybe. Yeah. No, I agree.
Maybe. Oh no! Now I seem like the intolerant actor, and you're the the lovely.
I was talking to Barry Rutter about you, and he said you were. No, it's a delicate thing, but you are absolutely in the hands of others, and then and something you may think that was obviously the best one, isn't it? And then actually it's someone else.
Yes,
but
that's very true. And also, but the flip side of that I love about filming, especially if you're on a film or something, and it's a big thing with a big budget and everything, you do feel like you're a small cog in a machine, but all those other parts are at the top of their game. And you really feel, wow, I'm being elevated by being in this mix.
Yeah. Well, I've just done Mission Impossible, which I did a week on it last year and a month this year, and probably more, because it's basically an ongoing rolling film. It never seems to stop. But exactly that. I mean, to be part of a machine that vast is, first of all, it's terrifying, and it's also thrilling, because it's like sort of watching one of those behind the scenes Pinewood documentaries they used to have on Bank Holiday Mondays. Used to go, this is how Superman was made, But it's
we're so from the same generation. It's so funny. We've got all these shared things. Yeah, Christopher Reeve as Superman. We're coming back to Mission. Don't worry. Those things where you get a glimpse, not like you do now, where you're seeing it every second minute. Everything shows you behind the scenes and the bloody weather. But in those days, you never saw that. It was exciting. Tell me the whole Mission Impossible story and the Mark Gatiss involvement from the minute the email pinged into your inbox.
Well, an email pinged into my inbox from Christopher McQuarrie saying,
"Get lost, get out of town," from Christopher McQuarrie.
He was a big fan. I met him through Simon Pegg, and he asked me if I wanted to be in Mission Impossible. I said, yes, please, I would. Yes, thank you very much. So I could think I'm the head of the DOA. I think, is that right? I can't remember. It's so complicated. But the brilliant thing was there was no script, and then there were some pages, and then when we arrived and they work in a completely different way. They work sort of back to front, and every time you sort of learn some sides, McHugh, as everyone calls it, would just go, don't worry about that. That's not it. And so you just sort of have to kind of roll with it. And then it does become something sort of settles. But then it's an extraordinarily interesting way of doing it. It's sort of like doing an art house film with a huge budget because everything is very improvisatory and they're hugely encouraging of you to sort of just throw things in. And weirdly, when the camera is like literally right in front of your face, it's the most relaxed you could ever be because it's sort of like doing radio. You just go, I'll do that again. I'll do another. I'll do 10. Do 10 like that, or try it like this. And it's all the nerves that you would have from the vastness of it kind of vanish because it's just you and the camera, And Tom is so welcoming and normal and funny and available. And I'll tell you this stuff. He told me on the first time last year. I can't remember how this subject came up, but we were talking about sort of divas or workplace bullying or something like that. And he said, I tell you who the worst for that is. Do you know Ron Howard? Ron Howard, Happy Days, Howdy Doody Show. I mean, and literally everyone's face. That guy. He talked for about 10 minutes, and then he just went, ah. It was the most brilliant piece of acting I've ever seen. We completely fell for it. But
the worst response to that would have been if you had said, "Yeah, I always thought he was a bit of an arse." If you said, "Yeah, I've never liked him," and then when he reveals at the end, you go, "What I say?"
I was joking. Yeah.
Oh wow! Do you do action stuff in it, or are you? What are you? You probably can't say what you do. I would imagine.
It's more sedentary. It's more governmental. But it was the most. Indira Varma was on the first one, and we didn't know.
Oh, was she?
I've known for years, and thank God. And then Janet McTeer was in this one. Who I've also known for years. Yeah. So we had such a good laugh. It's just, it's like nothing else I've done. It's such a huge franchise, and it's lovely just to feel a part of something so enormous. It's like being in a Bond film.
Well, yeah, I think I saw in that same interview, you said in a way it's bigger than a Bond film, and that's certainly, you could argue that. Tom Cruise himself, biggest film star in the world, has maintained this for a ludicrous amount of time. A few years ago, I think he's a little bit older than us. Make of that what you will. And someone said a few years ago, they said Tom Cruise is now, this is about 3 years ago, is now the same age as Richard Wilson was when he began playing Victor Meldrew.
But I remember I did Sunday Brunch last year with Sting. Oh, and my brother texted me while I was on the air saying, he said, "Jesus Christ, he looks younger than you." And he did. I mean, he's only 70.
He's 70, is he?
Yeah.
Isn't Rod Stewart 77?
Wow.
And he played the O2 the other night, and there was some bits of it on social media. He's running around and twirling his microphone, all that stuff.
We went to see Cher a few years ago, and that was a great night. And although she has a delicacy about her, you sort of feel if you grabbed her by the hips, your fingers might go through, like sort of like a toffee apple.
But you'd never do that again, would you?
No. But she was brilliant, and she said something like, I don't know, she's like 74 or something. She said, "I never thought I'd be here, 74 years old. But let me ask you this. What's your grandma doing tonight?"
Oh, fantastic. And so, Tom Cruise, what did you observe about how he works? By which I mean the difference between the close-up, the wide shot, all those things. I was in a film once with Ralph Fiennes, and I was very keen to watch as great an actor as him and see what he did just in the time when they say, okay, speed, running, da, 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 da. What did you observe with the biggest film star in the world?
Well, really, first of all, he is completely available. He did all his offlines for us for about 2 weeks.
Explain what those are for people not steeped like you are.
The cameras were on the rest of us. Tom was talking, doing his lines off camera, but it was always him. No, he didn't.
Because he's not in this shot. Yeah. It's all lit to be facing you. Yeah. And when we see the finished film, he'll be in the scene as well. And quite often for someone of his... it'll be somebody else reading in, we've got to find the results of this laboratory test or we will all die. Yeah. Quick, let's run.
Yes.
But there was none of that.
None of that. And then when it turns round to Tom, he's ready. So that I think is something which is proper star quality. I remember reading years ago about Sean Connery would not come out of his trailer until they were definitely ready because he knew what it's like, and he'd go, well, I'm waiting now. You said you were ready, and I think that's this. What it does, it sharpens everything. So you just feel like now it's time. And then in the same way, he just, he'd do the liner as written or as he wanted to do it, and then he'd just try something else. So it's a collaborative and very dynamic way of making a film, but it's very unusual because usually people have more of a schedule to stick to and a timetable. In that way.
Let's leap now nimbly to another great that I've so looked forward to talking to you about. A bit of background. In 1984, we had a holiday, not me and you, me and my family, in Torquay. 2 things notable. Careless Whisper was number 1. I was trying to style my hair like George Michael in that video. Make of that what you will. We saw Cannon and Ball being very funny at the Princess Theatre. And here's the point. We went to the opening of a Fate in Cockington, and it was opened by Larry Grayson.
No, what a joy. Oh, wow.
Why would I be bringing up the late and much missed Larry Grayson when I'm interviewing Mark Gatiss?
I don't know. Well,
your short-term memory really is shot, isn't it?
It's all going on.
Do you remember? You've played him in a thing, Mark. You enjoyed it, didn't you?
Thing. Yes. In the spring in Manchester, I played Larry Grayson in Russell T Davis's 3-part drama for ITV, Nolly, opposite Helena Bonham Carter as Noel Gordon, about Noel Gordon being fired from Crossroads. And Larry Grayson was her best friend. And again, this is one of those emails you hope will ping into your inbox because it was such a joy. And honestly, the biggest joy, but the whole thing was a lovely experience. I had such a laugh with Helena. And it's weird this, we're almost exactly contemporaries too. Yes. I remember having the poster for A Room with a View on my wall when I was in my first year at college. And I have met her a couple of times over the years, but we never worked together. And we got on straight away in a very Larry and Nolly kind of way. And we had such a good laugh. But the greatest joy for me was rediscovering Larry Grayson and watching so many clips and things, but just thinking, what an effortlessly funny man. I mean, I hope I've done him a modicum of justice because he was just like, there's virtually no material. It's just funny. And he just wonderful, strange things. And it's very, very familiar again to us. It all comes from he was from Nuneaton, but it's a very northern sensibility based around death and disease, He says,
yes.
It's so familiar. Again, I wish I was dead. All that, my hair wants washing. All it's stuff, and he just it's so good. And
he would say, well, I've not been well.
It's always it comes from a sort of I'll use this word advisedly, a sort of valetudinarian standpoint of a permanent invalid status. There's always something wonky or wrong or groaning or wheezing or painful. It's just wonderful. And yeah.
Just in case we have any younger observers, explain in a brief way. Oh, I went into a bit of Wogan there. Explain in a brief way who Larry Grayson was.
Well, he was a club comic, originally a drag act. He used to do, this is interesting, he used to do his act first half as a woman, second half as a man. he was on the circuit for 30 odd years and then was an overnight success story. And I think it might have been Michael Grade, or certainly an agent saw him in a club, gave him a guest spot on ITV. Yeah. Then he got his own series, Shut That Door. By the end of that year, he was on This Is Your Life and Variety Club Act of the Year. And then, most famously, he got the Generation Game after Bruce Forsyth and was even more popular. And he is, along with, say, John Inman and Melvin Hayes, he is the sort of the triumvirate of camp comics of that age. But sort of had a kind of tea time outrageousness. I mean, and it is outrageous. Some of the stuff, you wouldn't believe how filthy it is, but it was just there. What's interesting, though, is that there was a really good documentary about Larry Grayson about 5 years ago, and that's when I sort of discovered more, there was more to it, as it were, and also remembered how funny he was. But I was working with a friend at the time, and I was sort of eulogizing about him. And my friend was big in, I think I said this in the interview, was big in gay theatre in the 70s and gay lib, as they used to call it. And he said, you see, I can only ever think of him as the enemy. And that was because particularly Larry Grayson, John Inman, with the face of sort of tea time campness, but in a sort, as far as he was concerned, in a sort of neutered way, which meant that they weren't, it was just a sort of effeminate cliche, and not, as Russell T Davies thinks, was that these people, they were actually they were warriors. They were taking the flaming, screaming torch of homosexuality into people's living rooms. So, but I think it's a fascinating duality, and there is something about that with Larry Grayson. There's a real twinkle in his eye, and he's very vulpine, and that's what I love about it. There's something tasty in it. That it's not just safe at all. There's something, for all his sorts of unthreatening appearance, there's something in there which is a little more,
That reaction of your friend is fascinating, isn't it? Because it touches on lots of things. It's a subjective and perfectly valid reaction to him. It's not the reaction I had. I would be more aligned with Russell's because, and this is, see, what do you think of this? Sometimes when a character is like that, it is what we would call camp, is what we would call effeminate. They will say, oh, but that's a ludicrous stereotyping of a gay man. But I would say I have met and adored many men, gay men, and just there are different types of heterosexual men, there are different types of gay men. And I would say that is in the spectrum of different types of gay men.
I think the argument would be that in those days, when there were so few gay people on TV, if that was all you saw, that was what everyone was like. But it's the same old argument. It's like if you do a play about an issue of any kind, then it has to bear the burden of being about that. And you go, well, I'm not like that. And you go, well, I know, but we can't do everything at once. So I'm sure that's the heart of it. It's like, if there had been a spectrum of gay people on TV, then it would feel more balanced, but it wasn't like that. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's I'd never thought of it that way, Mark. That is all there was.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I was sad. Never mind.
Oh dear, how sad. Never mind. I've got an old real jukebox downstairs, and one of the records on it is Whispering Grass.
I love it. I love
Windsor Davis and Don Estelle.
The most unlikely hit record of the 70s. They were wonderful.
But equally rather lovely because Windsor's voice is wonderful. And Don Estelle sang beautifully.
Yeah.
I once, here's the topsy-turvy world of showbiz, I used to live in Hounslow in the late 80s for a while when I was trying to get into London. And I had hours and hours and hours to spend because I didn't have any work. And I would wander around the shopping mall and I came across Don Estelle selling his CDs.
In a window.
In a window or in an indoor area of the shopping mall, and I think he had the pith helmet and everything to remind people.
Yeah.
Well, there's the topsy-turvy world of show business for
when
you.
He was in the first series of the League as the
Was he?
Yeah, and when he arrived in the hotel, he had a big trunk, and he said, "I brought my own hats." That's proper old showbiz. He brought his own hats, a selection of hats. It's like coming with teeth or hair. I brought whatever you like, lads. Yeah.
I love that. And what did he do with the League?
He was the zoo. You remember there was a roundabout zoo with a chimney?
Yes.
He was the zookeeper. Yeah, that was that.
Did he have stories of It Ain't Half Hot Mum?
I remember. I think we sat in the hotel bar with him probably the night before because I think he was only there for the day. But it was there's that lovely thing where I look back now because it's already so long ago. But our first production office was a TV Centre, and it was like I remember going to see the two Ronnies did a reunion thing there, and we were still in touching distance with some of that thing. It's a bit like I was saying about the Titanic. You felt it was still a kind of, it feels like that now, but you were still in touching distance with some of those things, weren't we?
Yes.
That everything we'd grown up with about TV Central or about that cathedral of light entertainment was like, now we're part of it.
That's right. That's right.
I still find that very moving, and the more it recedes, the more you realize how lucky you were to be there.
Absolutely. That our generation, us being the same age, we overlapped and got to know some of those people, got to know Terry Wogan a little bit, got to know Ronnie Corbett, got to know Barry Humphries. I mean, what an absolute delight. You're super busy. Share with the Observer what it is that you're leaving us to go and do.
Oh, right. I am going to do, so last year, which I thought was going to be my ghostliest year ever, I did a new ghost story for Christmas, my own version of A Christmas Carol at Ali Pali, and I wrote and directed a new version of The Amazing Mr. Blunden for Sky. That was last year. This year, I've done another ghost story for Christmas, which is on the 23rd. With Jason Watkins.
I love Jason.
And a recording of The Christmas Carol is on in cinemas and on BBC4 over Christmas. And I am about to leave to go on a ghost hunt with the Reverend Richard Coles for the radio. So it's happened again. I've done a triple again. I couldn't be happier. It's always Christmas in our house, Rob, as you can see.
There's so much fun on me.
It's like Mother Hubbard.
I can just picture Bob the dog sitting looking forlorn in the corner.
It's a bowl of gruel. Yeah.
And you've got, tell us quickly where people can go and see Unfriended.
The Unfriend is at the Criterion in January with Gia Smith, Amanda Abington, Francis Barber. That's the beginning of next year.
Wow. I really look forward to this one because we've never really had a long chat. So
it's mad.
How nice to do it in public.
Yes, and with an echo.
Well, yeah, people don't realise, how difficult it is for us, Mark. We've been dealing with an echo. We've been dealing with terrible technical problems, but we are troopers like Larry Grayson. We've carried on. We've said, the place is alive.
We brought our own hats.
Yeah, that's better. That's the better one. Yeah.
That's the least they can remember us for,
Well, listen, shut that door, and I can't wait to see you doing that. Lovely to spend time with you. Thank you, Mark Gatiss.
Pleasure. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Brydon and is a Spotify exclusive podcast. Rob Brydon is the executive producer in partnership with the Talent Bank and Folding Pocket. The show is produced by Sam Roberts and Rebecca Taylor-Sims. For Spotify, the executive producer is Rachel Simpson. If you want to support the show, remember to leave us a rating on Spotify.